Hello to all. Thank you so very much for joining us on today with this Fat Boy Blues production. Today we are here to talk to each and every one of you about the vote, right? The vote, the process, education, city, local, state, the federal government and all, and how this current climate is still impacting that. But before we do that, here's what I need you to do for me. As this song plays, I ask that each and every one of you would please like, please love, and please share. So with that being said, let's jam just a little bit. Come on, because we're only human, baby. Song by Miss Kelly, Transcendent. Hey! Come on, like, love, share, jam. You need some merch? Let me know. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Again, I want to say welcome to each and every one of you that are joining us live, and or to those of you that are going to join us as you view this video. Listen, today is something that I feel is extremely important, right, to be talked about, which is the vote, right? There are many of times that we hear people say vote, 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 but we don't even really understand what we're voting for, who we're voting for, why our vote is important. And that's whether you are red, yellow, black, or white. Yeah, somebody said, yeah, we're all precious in this sight, right? But beyond that, do you know who you're voting for? Do you know why you're voting? right? Those are pivotal things that we need to learn. So today I felt like I should have this panel on to help us understand the importance of why. And what I also want to say is, even though this might be a popular discussion for you to have on CNN, even though this might be a popular discussion for you to have on MSNBC, Fox, and all of that, how important do you think it is to have this dialogue with people that you can relate to on a daily basis, right? People that you know understands your thought, people that you know won't chastise you for questions that you might feel are quote unquote ignorant, right? This is a safe space that is created, right, for that. So I encourage you, as you watch with us in this live session, I encourage you, ask your questions, leave your comments in the Facebook live section, and your question and or comment could be brought to life right here on today. So thank you for that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. And once they introduce themselves, I want them to tell you all who they are, a little bit about themselves, and why they chose to accept this invitation. And so today I'm going to start with you, Dean. Dean, if you would come on off mute and tell the people just a smidget of who you are and why you chose to accept the invitation on today.
Am I off mute? Okay. So my name's Dean Snell. I am an educator here in Atlanta, Georgia, well, in the Atlanta, Georgia metro area. I was a former Republican commentator, a former Republican policy writer, a former Republican, I guess you can say, I just worked for the Republican Party at one point in time. But I'm also very knowledgeable in civics and government. And as a teacher, one of the reasons why I decided to accept this is because as a teacher, I feel like we do need to educate our people, because 9 times out of 10, it's our people that end up losing when we have, certain candidates that win. I always tell people, when it rains for our white counterparts, it storms for us. We always get the worst brunt of any type of storm. I'm also the co-host of Truth to Power Uncut, and I host my own little podcast called Unpacking Politics with Dean as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Dean. Now we're going to move on to someone who never ever does panels, right? But he chose to accept the invitation to this panel, and for that I am grateful. And that is Brandon Edwards. Brandon, please tell the people who you are, a little bit about yourself and why you chose to accept the invitation.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Brandon, and I am, like I said, a political scientist with special emphasis in American politics, American elections, and also the presidency. And I chose this invitation. And first of all, I'm very honored to be chosen. So thank you so much again, Ray, for inviting me to your panel. That means a lot. But I chose to do this panel because I feel that voting is very important. And I feel it's especially important in this election, for so many reasons. You should vote in every election, but I feel as though this particular election is extremely important, especially because there's been efforts to suppress the vote. There's been efforts for folks who look just like us certain folks don't want us to vote, even though we have a long history of fighting for the right to vote. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I'll save that for later. But that's why I chose to do this panel, because I feel as though this election is very important and voting is very important. So definitely vote, in as much as any way that we can get out the vote, any way that we can provide a platform to encourage voting, I'm all for it. So thank you again.
Thank you so very much for that, Brandon. And next we're going to move to business owner, entrepreneur, Michelle. Come on and tell the people a little bit.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Marks Osborne. I am the owner of the Marks Osborne Group, which is a philosophical consulting firm. I deal with inclusion and equity and belonging, but most often in the anti-racism and anti-misogynoir spaces. I thank you, Ray, for inviting me back. I was with you about a month ago talking about voting, and here we are again. I decided to accept this, A, because I love Ray, but B, because voting is so very important. I don't think it's been this important ever in my lifetime. And I think we need to talk about it, and we need to understand it, and we need to talk about it in ways that our communities will understand what we're saying. And really to just shine some light on what voting means, because I don't think we understand what it means. And especially in this particular election, because we're voting in a pandemic and what that means. And we need to understand that. And we already know how to survey and move, but this is new to us. So we need to understand how to move those actions of surveying something and then moving accordingly into this, so that we're not victims of voter suppression as much as they want us to be.
Thank you so very much for that, Michelle. And now, last but certainly not least, I purposefully left this young lady last because I am honored to have her, a high school student, doing amazing and outstanding things. And I promised her that any platform that I had that I felt like she could speak truth to power, that I would extend this to her. So Nevaeh, will you please just tell the people just a little bit about who you are and why you chose to accept this invitation?
Yeah, my name is Nevaeh Hodges. I'm a senior at Halifax County High School. I'm a protest organizer. I've organized 2 successful events, and I'm organizing another one in Farmville against the ICE detention facility. I have done some voter registration with the community group Citizens Registering Citizens to do a community-wide voter registration. I founded an organization, Yay Halifax LLC, which is a youth organization in my county. I'm also a co-founder of the Halifax Unity Project, which is an organization in Halifax County to create positive interactions between police officers and citizens. I accepted the invitation to be on this panel, for one, because I missed the last one because I was taking an SAT. And because of COVID restrictions, it took an extra hour to get everybody in the building. So I was an hour and a half behind. And then 2, because, I want to be a voice for my generation, Gen Z, to speak on voting and why it's important, especially for us, because we do have the smallest voter turnout. My age range has the smallest voter turnout. So I think it's important for us to get out and vote as well.
Thank you so very much for that. And what I want to start off with actually is something, just a tidbit of a side note. And it was interesting because when Dean and Michelle and I were off the scenes, right before we came on, he brought up the topic of Andrew Gillum, right? And I do think it is important to say something about that. Dean, what I want you to do is tell the people what you were saying about that particular situation.
Well, for me, I understand Andrew Gillum. I always kind of mention to people that Andrew Gillum is a grandmother and my great grandmother are actually like first cousins. So he's kind of like a relative of mine. I kind of found that out as he was running for election in 2018. But I had to mention to people that, this is too much riding on this election for us to be focused on that situation. Andrew Gillum is going through his personal situation with his wife, and they have an understanding of what's going on. So let's leave it with them. Our input is really not needed at this time. And from the jump, when it first happened, I always just felt like this was a way for them to tear down another African American. A lot of people saw Andrew Gillum as another African American who could possibly be on the verge of a vice presidential candidate, a governor, or even a presidential candidate. So I guess for me, I just feel like at this time, let them do them as a family, let them sort out their problems. We have bigger fish to fry with the president who is talking about not giving up power if he loses an election, which is a major no bueno. That's like we're teetering on the place of totalitarianism, oligarchy, dictatorship. And I always remind people that the dictatorships, oligarchies, and totalitarianisms that we have today all came from democracies just like ours. All it took was one person who came to power and would not give up power that made that go not be a democracy anymore and become a dictatorship. So that's my focus right now. We also have the Supreme Court justice thing going on right now where, you know, so many people's constitutional rights may be taken away from them by whoever these people place in office. Plus, we have voting suppression that's going on all over the country. People can't mail in ballot. Some counties are talking about cutting back on the hours that they do early voting, in-person early voting. And then you have a president that's also telling people to, hey, you should go out and sit at the polls and make sure that everything is going right. But we know what happens when, I call them our clear cousins, when our clear cousins get this attitude of, I need to make sure that things are going correct. And we end up with another situation like we ended up with the Rittenhouse kid, where somebody would end up being hurt. Because honestly, a lot of those people that follow him take things into their own hands, and they are big Second Amendment rights people. So that's just how I feel about the whole Andrew Gillum situation. It's too much riding on this election for us to be focused on that right now.
So to that point, let me open up the floor because I do want us to address that quick, and then we'll move. Does anybody else share those same sentiments, or do you have a different approach?
Let me jump in since I was part of the conversation a little bit. I actually don't care. I'm not married to him. I don't care. Like, that's their understanding. That family that's how they've decided to deal with whatever the questions are, because it's not an issue for them, it's an issue for us. It exposes our culture's continued issues with homophobia, transphobia, because it's all in the same bucket. And we need to learn how to live our own best lives and recognize that our collective lives, gay, straight, in between, whoever you are, our collective lives are on the line. Because if we're dragged back to anything before 1964, we're in trouble. And that's where we're headed. We're not even heading there, like we're well on the road. So my concern is all the other stuff. I'm not concerned about Andrew Gillum. I actually think that he would still make a better governor than what Florida has right now. So I have learned how to compartmentalize. My question is, where are we going right now? And where we're going right now is dangerous for everybody if you're not white, male, and straight.
Okay. Brandon.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I think the unfortunate part is, and something to keep in mind, is when you put yourself out there in public life or make yourself a public figure, fair or not, it comes with a certain amount of expectations. And it's also unfortunate that you can do a million things right and you make a mistake and it just erases all of the great things that you did. So I do feel as though, I think what would have, maybe for Andrew Gillum, it was a gamble, and of course it's no one's business. However, he came out on the talk show, Tamara Hall, and publicly said that he was bisexual. Now, he may not have had, unfortunately, the same success in Florida as the mayor, but if he had done that prior to, get ahead of it before you forced into a situation, that would have helped him. And unfortunately, also unfair is that when you're Black and you have a Black family, you're Black, you are just held to a whole nother set of standards. So my thing is, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but before you get out there in public life like that, ensure that you have all of your skeletons out in terms of maybe, you know, sexuality. It can't be a quote unquote vulnerability for you or that sort of thing. Because I think that's what, but like your, like Michelle just said though, I honestly don't really care at the end of the day. I honestly 100% agree that he will make a much better governor than the governor that's in Florida right now. And I think it's sometimes very unfair that we judge so much of a public figure. We judge so much of their personal life, because at the end of the day, I'm concerned with how they're going to govern, how they're going to do that job. What happens in their personal life, in their bedroom, all that stuff, at the end of the day, doesn't really make too much difference for me.
Okay, thank you. Nevaeh, do you have anything that you would like to add on that?
I mean, I pretty much agree. Honestly, I feel like with politics, we do care too much about people's personal lives and not their policies or what they're actually doing. And I feel like it's sad that in this world, your sexuality is so important. I don't care if whoever is running for office is gay, straight, bisexual, pansexual, demisexual. That doesn't matter. As long as their policies and their actions are reflecting what they're saying, I don't care about that. So I feel like, honestly, we need to mind our business when it comes to politicians' personal lives.
Okay, and to everybody's point, you know, I hear everybody say we should mind our business. But again, to you, Brandon, one of the things that I would hear, right, is the fact that he is a public figure, right? This is someone who wanted people to vote for him for the gubernatorial race. It was him that was in the spotlight. It was him that was, you know, pushing against his opponents, right, to gain other people's votes. So what do you say to those people that say, yeah, especially to those that are of the Black and brown communities, right, that say, oh, it's okay, mind your business, but had this been a white opponent in the same posture, do you not think that the Black and brown community would have been just as vocal as they are about him? Brandon?
I mean, that's very possible. I mean, you know, example, say, I don't know, Pete Buttigieg. You know, there was a number, I know Black folks who, I mean, who, because of his sexuality, being gay and being married to a man, that was an automatic no-no for them. But I do think that it goes back to how, as a culture, we feel about American politics. American politics, right or wrong, we not only judge the person's policies. For many people, that person in a public figure, they're a symbol of a lot of things, you know, like the president, or, you know, generally speaking, we see as not only a person who has general, you know, certain policies, but they represent the United States. They represent us abroad. They represent us on the world stage. So that's why, not saying I agree with it, but that's why I feel that some people do judge people's personal life so much, especially those who are in public life, because they see them as a symbol for so many different things. And when people view someone as a symbol, then they're really harsh on all areas of their life. And I'm fair or not, you know, so that's just how I feel on that.
Can I just comment right there really quickly? So
yes, and then after you, Michelle, Dean, come on in.
The issue I have is the hypocrisy of it all, because the same people who would judge Andrew Gillum or did judge Pete Buttigieg, and say, and it was Black and white people who said, I can't vote for him because it goes against my religious beliefs. And I said, well, what do your religious beliefs say about a thrice married serial adulterer? Like, can we, if we're going to do it, let's do it. And if we're not going to do it, leave it all alone. And that's the issue that I have, and why for me, it really wasn't an issue, because if you can wink at all the rest of that and paying off porn stars and, you know, all of these other things that are done, and 27 accusations of sexual assault, if you can wink at all of that, then you can turn an eye to something that doesn't actually involve you, And that's who is representing us on the world stage, someone who is infantile and throws tantrums. And if the only issue I had to deal with somebody is bisexual versus all of that, I'd rather deal with a person who can put together complete sentences and act with decorum than what we have right now.
And let's
Thank
just
you.
be clear. And let's just be clear, because the same African American people that say it goes against my religion and all this other stuff, but they had no problem with Bill Clinton cheating on Hillary Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. Heck, I remember, and I think I was still a teen. I think I was a teenager, preteen, somewhere along the lines when those court cases was going on. But I remember being there. Heck, they even had on Kings of Comedy, they even mentioned it, and how black people was like, oh yeah, that's what makes him black. And it's like, so you cheating on your wife is what makes you black, but you can't get behind a candidate that is, LGBTQ. And I'm just talking about Pete Buttigieg, who is married to one person who doesn't have any, that we know of, any instances of, infidelity in his marriage. So it's the hypocrisy that we see in our community as a whole, because I also tell people, you have to look at how people are going to affect your lives with policy. This person's personal life is, all willy-nilly, but what are you going to do for me policy wise? And I think that's what gets so many people upset with Republicans right now, because Republicans have been, for the longest, they've been the people that have thrown out about being, family values and family first. And now they have this, technically this sexual predator, lying person. I want to say something else, but I won't. Lying person sitting as the head of their party. And they don't care, because right now the head of their party is giving them what they want and what they need, which is a Supreme Court that's going to be conservative and give them and rule on all the stuff that they need. Because I keep telling people, as soon as this woman is placed as a Supreme Court justice, all of those cases that they wanted to bring up, Roe versus Wade, I'm sure they're going to bring back up some of those voting rights bills that have been passed and have been harped on, which affects us African Americans. So yeah, Roe versus Wade affects women, but those voting rights acts affect us as African Americans, because we have a voting rights act. Women don't have a voting rights act. They had an amendment. Okay, we had an act that had to be passed for us to have the opportunity to vote just like everybody else. Also, gay rights will be going back up towards the Supreme Court. All that stuff that they've been harping on. Remember, African Americans, about 30 to 40% of African Americans have pre-existing conditions before they're 30, 35. And for those people that had COVID will become a pre-existing condition. So if they pull that back up to the Supreme Court and they rule that, ACA is unconstitutional, that means you went and got tested for COVID, and now you on your record it says this person was positive for COVID. That's going to follow you your whole life. That means insurance companies don't have to cover you. That means medical companies don't have to cover you. So I think people forget, how policy and candidates, and I always talk from the policy and candidate standpoint, how policy and candidates impact our lives. So yeah.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate that.
Can I say something?
And yes.
And I think this just brings it back into this topic that we're talking about today with voting. Okay, everything that everyone just said is the reason.
I'm gonna put a pin in you right there, because I have a question about. I have a question about that. But before we move to that, I promise you, I'm coming back to that. Nevaeh, because I want to make sure that you don't have a final statement to rest on that Andrew Gillum piece. No. Okay. Well, here's what I will say. I heard a statement, right, by Alex, I believe it's Alex Padilla, and his statement said, voting is the oxygen, right, of our democracy. So what I would like to know, and I'm gonna come to you, Michelle, is who is responsible for running a fair, accessible, and securing our elections? Who is responsible for that?
You want the idyllic answer or the real answer? Because they're two different things.
Okay, well, give me the first answer. Give me the idyllic answer.
The idyllic answer is that our government, our federal government, has laws that would ensure that each and every citizen is protected with their right to vote. The real answer is that no one earnestly protects our right to vote. If you're speaking of Black people specifically, because you can't just say people of color have the right to vote, because we each receive the right to vote at different times. People celebrated the women's right to vote being through the 19th Amendment, but they failed to recognize that Black women were not included in that number. And so no one protects our right to vote. As a matter of fact, our right to vote from emancipation has been actively fought against with no real governmental protection, none. Like they're like, well, you know, if they decide there's a poll tax, then there has to be a poll tax. What's going on in Florida with felons right now is a modern day poll tax. It is a 21st century version of voter suppression. We have no one in government at large who will actively protect us. We need, I think we have 28 amendments right now. We need a 29th that wholly guarantees our right. The 13th and 14th amendments don't do it. 13th, 14th, and 15th. And so we need something that's actually going to protect us. And Brandon is right. Our voting rights are not only on the line, Brown versus Board of Education is on the line. And that is only going to codify in the law what has been actively occurring for the last 35 to 40 years. Separate and unequal has actually been happening across the country in quote unquote liberal states as well as in conservative states. That's part of the reason why I keep telling people you have until the 30th to get your census in. Because part of the reason we don't get money in our communities, I don't want the government in my business. Well, your kids have no books because you don't want the government in your business. And the census is a form where you just fill it out and say who's in your house, how old they are, and keep going. 10 minutes it takes online. And so we don't understand, I don't think, we've become apathetic. I understand as a Black woman what that means because I'm sick of carrying the Democratic Party on my back. Black women show up all the time and then we get dropped off. But there's some things we need to do internally to ensure that we're no longer just dropped off after we deliver. But no one protects us.
Thank you. Nevaeh, same question to you. And the reason I'm posing this same question to you, I want to know from your thought process, right? And for those that don't know, Nevaeh is not only just an activist and a student organizer, she's also the junior mayor of South Boston, Halifax County, South Boston. I lump it all into one. But she represents that. And what I would like for you to do outside of answering that question, right, is tell the people what a junior mayor does. What does that entail? What are some of the roles that you have to do? But to that point that I was asking, what do you say to those people that say the Secretary of State, right, is the one that is responsible, right, for running and making sure that the elections are fair, accessible, and all of that, and secure? What would you say to constituents out here?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious through statistics, through research, that it's not fair, that everybody's right to vote isn't being protected. I mean, you can just literally simple Google search, they'll tell you like they're really suppressing Black voters, minority voters all over the country right now. So if that is their job, they're not doing it. I think that's pretty obvious. Speaking on the junior mayor of South Boston thing, well, right now, our first official work session with the South Boston Town Council is actually on Monday. So that's where we're going to go and like give ideas and kind of see what they do. But before then, we've basically been working within each other, within the Youth Town Council, to come up with ideas, plans on what we want to see in South Boston. I'm the primary mayor. We also have 2 other mayors as well, because the mayor wanted us to have groups of 3 for the mayor and vice mayor. But as the primary mayor, I basically just run the meetings. Everybody runs ideas through me. Me and the vice mayor usually just agree on stuff, vote on stuff. We try and use like the same procedures as the town council. We've been to one of their meetings and just gave a brief introduction, but I think the real work is going to start on Monday.
All right, thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that. Now, moving on just a tad bit, right? Here's a term that I would hear and I would get so frazzled because I was like, what does this term mean? And it keeps coming, I hear it over and over and over, Dean. And that comment is, people talk about Dixiecrats, right? To the uneducated person or to the person that doesn't have a GED, right? That's why I'm doing this panel, right? Because I need people to understand not all of us understand different slang, different lingo, right? And we talk about the vote. To your point earlier, Michelle, we don't know what we're voting for because we still don't understand the jargon that is associated with all of the political science majors or the people that minored in political science or lobbyists, right? Which is another term that I'll get to, but help us understand, help the people understand who and what Dixiecrats really are.
Okay, well, first, before I go into that question, I kind of wanted to piggyback off of Michelle's question, which was about who helps, who ensures a secure election. And again, it's your Secretary of State that's supposed to secure your election. If you guys have a Secretary of State that's not securing your election, that is fighting, like the Secretary of State in Florida right now, that's putting an injunction on Michael Bloomberg for paying off the restitutions of those convicted felons to be able to vote. That's a problem for me. When you see stuff like that, that should give your antennas to go like this, because most of the time those people that can't afford to pay off their restitutions are people of color. So that's again, that's a poll tax. Like Michelle said, that's a poll tax. We know if our cousin Bobby got a $10,000 fine that he has to pay before he can vote, he can't pay that, and we can't pay that, because 9 times out of 10, Bobby can't even get a job. He's fresh out of jail, or he's been out of jail for a couple of years. He probably has one of those jobs that pays him the bare minimum of what he needs. Okay, so your Secretary of State is the person that and they're elected just like your governor every 4 years. When your governor goes up for election, you're choosing the Secretary of State too. And that's why I tell people you need to be looking at these state elections, because these people are the people that's going to hinder your life. They hinder you from voting. They're going to hinder you from doing certain things, because your state government has more power over your life than the federal government. Trump can't do nothing in your state unless you're.
I'm gonna come back to you on that point, because I already know you made a statement about that, and I am gonna definitely come to you on a statement that I heard you make.
But Dixiecrats are basically a bunch of Southern Democrats who kind of switched over to the Republican Party when it's 2 waves of Dixiecrats. The first wave of Dixiecrats was when Democrats became a little more progressive and they signed the Civil Rights Act. When that happened, a lot of those Dixiecrats kind of moved over to the Republican Party, and we saw the shift of Black voters going to the Democratic Party and a lot of those Southern Democrats going to the Republican Party. That's all it is. It's that shift that happened. So all of those people that you guys, basically all those people you see that's waving those Confederate flags on TV and talking about, my rights, and I'm gonna say just like my rights, and the flag, it's the flag. The flag is about Southern pride. Those are the people that are what we call Dixiecrats. Those are the last wave of people that moved over to the Republican Party, and they now vote Republican, and they now run the Republican Party on top of those Tea Party people that came in 2010, 2012. So that's Dixiecrats for you.
Okay, well, thank you. I love the accent. You know, it seems to be that you are on point with that accident. Brandon, are there many, do you think there are many Black Dixiecrats?
I think there might be a few. They may not necessarily be as vocal, but I think they might, they're out there for sure. Especially, I think you're going to find more of them in rural areas, small towns, Halifax County, if you will, that type of thing. Because it was so interesting. Even it's just amazing how geography really plays a huge role as well. Because up here in the DC area where I'm at, it's all about Biden and Harris. Last week when I was driving toward Lynchburg, it was all about Trump and Pence going down 29. So, but I also want to say, is it Vay? Is your name? Sorry. I just want to say, I think it's great what you're doing in terms of being the vice mayor. I just want to give kudos to you because I didn't even know there was a vice mayor in certain areas in city, in communities and stuff. So I think that's great. We'll definitely keep up the great work. You're doing more than people. I mean, I don't even know if you're old enough to vote, and you're doing more than folks who adults by far. So I think that's great. But I also wanted to highlight what Michelle said earlier about the census. I think that's something that we don't talk about nearly enough. The census is so important. It's so important because that determines so much on what happens in our communities. And if we want our communities to have more of a seat at the table and to get the funding that we deserve, filling out the census is extremely important. And I definitely wanted to, I had to say something on that. I've been trying to wait my turn. But in terms of also about the Secretary of State being responsible for the elections, I think that we need to, if we could change the laws or the books and have the person quote unquote responsible for the elections be truly an independent person. Someone who's overlooking the election should not be affiliated with one party or the other, or for one governor or the other. It should be someone, as much as we can be, independent, because I think that's the only way that we can do our best to ensure that we have a fair election system. Because because otherwise, that happened, I think, in Georgia. Stacey Abrams, I think, got cheated out of her out of that race. In Florida too. And I think that's why we really should need to change that whole dynamic, that the secretary or whoever is responsible, who have oversight of the election, should be an independent, nonpartisan person or team.
And just to say, because I was going to mention that, and that basically what happened with Stacey Abrams, the Secretary of State at the time was Brian Kemp, who's now the governor. So Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State who was over the elections, which wasn't unconstitutional for the state, because there was nothing written in the Constitution that stated that he couldn't run the election, which is a problem, but it's not a problem because that just means that people need to start reading their state constitutions more. You can make the change, but it has to go through the state constitution, because the Secretary of State's job duties and description in Georgia's constitution and all the state constitutions is of the Secretary of State. So a way to change that is you have to change it state by state, and that's the people have to do that. So the people have to either vote on it, I believe 60 to 70%, or the House of Representatives for that state has to vote on it. And right now the state House is Republican. So right now Republicans are benefiting from a Republican Secretary of State. So of course they're not going to change it. Politics is a dirty game. It's one of those games where as long as I'm benefiting from it, there's no change that's going to happen. But as soon as I stop benefiting from it, there's going to be a problem. Kind of like what happened in North Carolina when before the Democratic governor stepped to power, the Republican House of Representatives snatched half his power away. So
they tried to.
Right.
He sued and got it back.
He got it.
Yeah. Right.
Thankfully, you have the state judicial branch as well. So that was a good thing.
I mean, here in North Carolina, there's a few things that are happening with regard to this election, and we're less than 40 days away. One of the things that occurred, and I can speak to Virginia because of my ties there, and then here in North Carolina as well. One of the things that happened here in North Carolina this week that I think flew under the radar because of all of the other dust that keeps getting kicked up is that a very key decision was made regarding mail-in ballots. And that is that if you vote by a mail-in ballot and something's wrong, they have to give you a chance now to fix it. So if your signature doesn't look the same, or you maybe transposed 2 numbers on your social security number, on the last 4 digits of your social, or they couldn't read it or whatever, you will have the opportunity to correct that. You have a small window to do it, but you now have an opportunity to correct that. On our state level, there's like an electoral board that is supposed to be bipartisan, but typically because it's only 5 of them, there's always one more depending on who the governor is. So if the governor is Democratic, it'll be 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Well, the 2 Republicans resigned because they said that the rules were being changed in a way that they weren't comfortable with. Well, I need to remind you that here in North Carolina, and I've only been here about 16 or 17 months, the last electoral cycle in 2016, because the House of Representatives was also up in 2018, but they tried to steal the 9th Congressional District's election. They literally tried to steal it. They went to people's houses and said, we're here to collect your ballots. And then when people who were unaware of the system gave their ballots to these people, they discarded them. They literally threw them away. And the only reason that it was caught was because people were like, why wasn't I counted? And people are going to jail over this. In Virginia, the person who is running as a Republican, I'm sorry, it's always Republicans right now. The person who's running as a Republican in the 2nd Congressional District against Elaine Luria, there have been 2 people in his campaign from 2018. One has already been convicted of a crime. The second one is currently being charged because they falsified signatures on a particular candidate from another party, dead people who had left the state. They just started writing in people's names. They are actively attempting to steal the election. In so many ways, it's dizzying. It's dizzying. And so we have to become aware and we have to become proactive. We are already pragmatic. We already know why we're voting for one over the other. We can articulate it and even throw in, yeah, we know he's not the best, and then we launch into the rest of it. I look at it like this. When my mother was born, she was not eligible to vote, not because of the fact that she was born in a particular year, but at that time, if she had come of age between that time and 1964, it wasn't a right for her to vote. And that's how we need to think about it. We need to start seeing and we need to start doing. And Dean is right. If you don't vote in state elections, whatever happens to you on the state level is because you didn't vote in the state election. People will vote for president and leave the rest of the ballot blank. You cannot do that.
To your point, Michelle, I'm going to ask you to do this, and I'm going to come around circle for you. 2, I want you to tell me 2 positions in your state that people have the right to vote for. What are two capacities, right? That you know people don't come out and vote so that these people can be held accountable, right? Or the lights on fire. What are 2, only 2, just 2 positions? Everybody else, I'm coming to you with the same question. What are 2 positions that people don't go out to vote for that are pivotal, right? Because we are under the mindset that the presidential election is the most important. So I want you all to be able to tell me 2 and give me reasons why their vote matters in these positions. Michelle?
Well, I'm going to choose the Attorney General and the Chief Justice of your state. Those are the two I'm going to choose. Dean already talked about the state legislature, so they're off the table. But the attorney general, if you don't like what happened in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor, you better vote for an attorney general who believes what you believe, who will stand for what you stand for, and who will at least claim to want to fight for you. The second is the Chief Justice. Here in North Carolina, our Chief Justice's name is Sherry Beasley. She happens to be a Black woman who is making moves in the judiciary in North Carolina. She has put racism on the forefront of her agenda and is not afraid to talk about it. She is seeking to balance the scales of justice in North Carolina in ways that has never been seen. So those are the two, to me, aside from what Dean said, if I'm going to choose two others, the Attorney General and the Chief Justice.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up for you. What makes the Attorney General, outside of, we know the current climate of Breonna Taylor's situation, right? But what is it about the Attorney General that people should really focus on? Is there something specific that they should really focus on?
Well, if the Attorney General is seeking to exercise the law in a fair and balanced manner, that is the only way that cases get brought before grand juries. It impacts how, if you are, or someone in your family is the victim of a crime, once, the police do their investigation and say, yes, there was a crime, here's the information. You want the Attorney General who doesn't stand up and say, hi, in North Carolina, his name is right now is Josh Stein. Hi, I'm Josh Stein, this is Josh Stein versus whoever. They stand up and they say their name. He would say, Josh Stein for the people, Your Honor. He's supposed to work for you, whoever you are. So if you're Black and there's a crime, if you're white and there's a crime, if you're LGBT and there's a crime, if you are, whoever you are, if you are a citizen and or resident, because everyone in America is not citizens. We have permanent residents. We have different types of people who live here, but they stand for the people. At least they're supposed to. They're supposed to. And so that's why I chose the Attorney General. And the Attorney General is the one who enforces the laws, who interprets the laws, and is supposed to ensure that they are exercised fairly.
Thank you. Dean, same questions to you.
Well, I love that she talked about the Attorney General, and let's definitely not forget the district attorneys too, because they have those same powers that people kind of miss out on. So I'm gonna go with the district attorneys, which for the same reason Michelle said with the state attorneys, because district attorneys are basically on a smaller scale with what a state attorney is. And the district attorneys are the people that, again, interpret the law as far as, they're the DA, because I know some people may know him as the DA. So when you hear the DA, that person that interprets the laws, they're the ones that go into court and they're coming on behalf of whoever they're coming on the behalf of. My other person I would say would be, and I'm gonna go back to Secretary of State. Secretary of State, because we know what the governors can do. People, we know what governors can do, but people kind of miss out on that Secretary of State role. That Secretary of State role deals with elections. They deal with, everything that goes along the lines of the election. And elections are important because, like you said in your quote, voting is the oxygen of democracy. If democracy, if you have an Attorney General that's stifling democracy at every end, that's a bad thing. We saw that happen in Florida. We saw that happen in Georgia. And we're now seeing that happen in several Republican states now in the 2020 election. You can't have secretaries of state that are presidential lackeys like they do what the president says. They have to do what the people say because the people voted for them, not the president.
at this time, do you feel as if your Secretary of State is a lackey to the president?
Oh yeah, Christopher M. Carr is is definitely a lackey. He's a Republican, just like our governor Brian Kemp. They were part of the same crew. So they have the same mindset. They're going to do the same. They're going to act out on the same behaviors as their Republican counterparts. Heck, even my former state where I was born, Florida, we just saw the governor of Florida open the state back up. And we didn't see the attorney general or the secretary of state step up, or the lieutenant governors, and we forget about those people too, the lieutenant governors, which, people vote for as well. They're like almost like the vice president of the state. Nobody's coming up to speak up and say, hey, I think this is a bad idea, because all of them are lock in step with what this president is saying. And to be honest, the reason why most of these states are opening up, because it gives them a right to say, well, why are you trying to mail in your ballots when the state is open so you can go vote whenever you want to. The state's open. Corona can't be that bad if the state is fully open. So yeah, those are my two people. Secretary of State.
Thank you. And with that, Jamal Gordon had made a post, and he says federally, as of 2018, only 32% of Americans know that we have 3 branches of government. And I'm going to come down to you, Nevaeh. I want you to give me those 2 offices that I asked for, but I also would like for you to address that statement and help us understand those 3 branches of the government.
Okay. Well, for me, I think the 2 that okay. I'm going to say mine specifically. I'm going to get real local with mine. I would say board of supervisors and town council. And I say this because living in Halifax County, I had no idea until recently that we had like 3 governing bodies in Halifax County, 2 town councils and a board of supervisors, which is pretty basic information, but like, I don't think anybody 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 in Halifax County is voting for board of supervisors or town council at all. And there are so many old white men running unopposed for these positions. Nobody runs against them. And they keep getting voted in by the same people. And Halifax County, you know how it is. You know what type of people are getting voted in and what type of people are voting for them. So I think that that's extremely important for people to vote for, especially if you live in a town that is basically just Confederate flags and Trump supporters. You need to make sure that you vote people in who aren't just Confederate flag wavers and Trump supporters.
So what does the board of supervisors do, and the town council? What are some of the can you give us some examples of what those do? Because it's not just in Virginia. Every state has a board of supervisors, and every state has a town or city council. So what are some of the intricate things that they do?
Well, I would say one is like budgets for like the towns, like town of Halifax, town of South Boston. They do a whole lot of financing, a whole lot of budgeting. And if you want something done in the town, you go to them. So I feel like a lot of people, they don't even know, like people don't even go to the meetings. Honestly, I've been to some of the meetings, people don't even go to the meetings. And it's a whole lot of stuff that people want to do in the town. I'm like, if you want to get it done, go to the meetings, go speak to them. Financing, budgets, all of that, like literally, also with like businesses too. They handle a lot of stuff with business. People go to them all the time with proposals for businesses and areas, like just now recently with like one of the big ones is Italian Delight. The former owner of Italian Delight, which everybody loves, they're moving to the Halifax Farmers Market, which was like a big deal because he's opening up a new restaurant. They're bringing back Fruitopia and all that. And all of that went through the Halifax Town Council. So there's a whole lot of things that they handle, and the board of supervisors as well. Like the biggest thing with the board of supervisors right now, Confederate statute. Our Confederate statute. It's their job to decide the removal. Right now it's on the ballot, but they still have the power to make the decision themselves. And people don't even go to the meetings. They don't even speak on it. And another thing with the board of supervisors is the Halifax militia. trying to go to the board of supervisors and ask for like basically their permission that if something happens, the board of supervisors will call them up to respond to. So people don't even go to the meetings. People don't even speak on it at all. They don't do anything when all you have to do is go say, I'm against this. The board of supervisors will listen to you. If they know that the citizens of Halifax County are against it, they're not going to, because their names are on the vote. I remember when we were voting for the Confederate statue, my friend Blair Trent, she went and spoke and she said all of y'all's names. She called them out, every single one of them by name. She said, when you vote for this statue, your name is attached to it. Your grandchildren will see it. Your great grandchildren will see it. If the community came together and put pressure on them to do things, they would do it. And if the community came together and voted for the right people, then things would get done. Like if we had the right people in the board of supervisors, that statue would be gone. It would have been knocked down by now. It wouldn't have even been pushed back. It wouldn't be on the ballot. It would have been gone.
Thank you, Nevaeh. And I see your finger up, and I'll get to you, Dean. But and to that point, again, tell us about the 3 branches of government.
Okay, well, honestly, thing about the three branches of government is people don't even know that there's anything other than the key position, the president, the governor. They don't know about legislative. They don't know about judicial at all. And I feel like people think that Donald Trump is out there just writing laws and signing them himself. They don't know. We have a legislative branch that is writing the laws. They don't know that we have a court system that is looking at laws and determining whether or not they're constitutional. So I feel like people only vote for president. They only vote for the governor. They don't understand that you can have a president that's Democrat all you want. But if your Congress, your House is Republican control, you're not gonna get anything done. And I feel like people really need to be more educated on it. There's a song, it's called My Vote Don't Count, and it explains it. It's by a rapper called Yellow Pain. It perfectly explains. I feel like any young person, because it's actually a good song. It's not one of those songs where they just make it and young people don't like it. It's actually a good song, good beat. It explains it perfectly that people don't know that there are 3 branches of government.
Wow. Thank you so very much. And Dean, I'm not forgetting you, and I see you with your pen, so you're going to write down that point. So you hold your point. Brandon, I do want to come to you. Two positions, right? And yes, you all, even though I asked you these questions, yes, you can go back to said points, because I know everybody has a go back to moment. Come off mute, bro.
I've been taking notes myself because there's been so much I want to say. First, I'm big on shout outs. I want to give a shout out to my friend Jamal. That's my really good friend. For that fact checking there, 32%. Yes. And so this is something that something we may have all heard. All politics is local. So the fact of the matter is, I can definitely identify two government positions that are important for me. I have to say Attorney General. I think the Attorney General is essence, because ultimately things don't get changed without laws being changed, without laws and regulations being put in the books. And I also would say state legislators, state delegates, your state senators, those type of things. Very, very important. Because, like I said, it goes back to all politics are local. First, so I want to say that all politics are local. So therefore, every position that's quote unquote not a federal position is very important. If you want to know, if you are interested in your,
thank you for stealing my the answer to my questions, because I definitely was going to say that. I heard that all politics are local. So
all
when
politics are local. Because ultimately, yes, we care about what happens in the country, but we also care about what happens in our own communities. Everything from your county councils to school boards. School boards are also elected positions, to your sheriffs, to your board of supervisors, to your mayors. Those are all very, very important because they have a direct impact on where you live and how your tax dollars, your local tax dollars, going to be allocated. Your local government determines how much funding your schools are going to get, how much funding your libraries are going to get. How can you vote? Your voting hours in your local area. And I think going back to what you said earlier, Ray, is like, I think that for folks like us who might be a little bit more, let's just say, knowledgeable on the political process, I feel have a responsibility to go out into our communities and to our families and communicate with those people who may not understand, who may not keep up with politics the way we do, to I'm not going to say necessarily educate them, but to get down their level. And I don't say that with no, not trying to be funny, to help them understand as to why they should care about voting, especially in these local elections, because it truly impacts where they live, and so I think that often gets lost. I think the media doesn't focus on that as much as well. I think that's why we don't make a quote unquote bigger deal about that. But yes, all politics are local. And I think that for me, go ahead. I'm sorry. So yeah, so I just want to say, I can go on and on, but yeah, so I think we have to keep that in mind. You want to be impacted. If you care about your community, your local community, that's why it's important to pay attention and vote in these local elections. Because in my view, yes, the federal elections are important, but your local elections or your local positions are just as important.
Brandon, we are empowering them.
1 second, Michelle, because
I wanted to give that word to Brandon because he was saying he didn't want to say educate. We are empowering them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And empowering them.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm glad. Thank you for that, because I had a discussion with someone who is steeped in politics, and they just said they felt a certain type of way simply because they feel like they are saying the same thing over and over and over, right? It's become redundant, and they are so frustrated, right? Because they feel like, if I've told you this one time before and I've told you, you should get it. But my argument and my pushback is everybody is not learning at the same level at the same time. And we have to be patient, right, with people, because you might tell me 1 + 1 is 2, but until I might be a visual learner, right? I might not be able to understand what you have said to me, show me, and then I might not be a visual learner. So it might take you to tell me 10 times over, but you have to be willing, right? Anybody that is running for an office, it is that person's job. Or if you are trying to tell me to vote for a specific candidate, right? If you are the person that is the vocal selling point or vocal selling piece, it is your job to sell this particular brand or this particular person to me, so that I will feel inclined in my decision, right, to go and put this check mark or fill in this oval that says, hey, I'm going to select said candidate. But I watched, I'm coming to you, Dean, next. I watched the young lady, right? The woman, she went viral. She was a professor, and I think she lives in Florida, and she said what she said to Trump. But I watched her interview. She said, excuse me 1 second, Mr. President, let me finish what it is that I have to say. And he nicely buckled up his lips, right? And she finished, but in a interview she talked about how she teaches the Constitution. But she said, Trump has done nothing for her as the president of the United States. And she also said, Obama had done nothing for her as the president of the United States of America, right? And she said, I was not going to vote, but it took a foreigner that now is a citizen here in the States to employ her to go out and vote, simply because he told her, you are complaining about what they didn't do, and you're here where you have a right to vote. And I came from a space that I don't have a right to voice my opinion as such, and that ability to vote. So yes, I have argued, and I still do it with people that say, listen, I'm tired of it. I have thrown my hands in the towel. Yet you always see people say, no vote is a vote for Donald Trump. Well, if you're not willing, as people that are steeped in this political climate, right? And that hold this wealth of knowledge, if you're not willing to share that information, and let me say this, and I've told Michelle, and she jumps on me sometimes, and some other people, I am not a political science major. I am drawn to the idea of politics. I absolutely love politics. However, I don't have the wherewithal to stand, if you will, with someone that is steeped in it. I know how to ask questions that might seem dumb, questions that might be repetitive, but guess what? When you think about it, how do you get your clothes clean? You put them in a washing machine and you let them go around. It's a cycle. Every year there's a cycle. Every 2 years there's a cycle. Every 4 years there's a cycle. And if it wasn't necessary, right, to hear, do you think that we will have political debates? Do you think that we will have panels? Do you think we will have anything? We wouldn't even have Facebook for social media, because most people voice their opinion and their statements through Facebook. Yes, Dean, come on. I just had to give you that, Brandon. Kudos to you, because it is imperative that we educate. It doesn't matter if you are a Republican. It doesn't matter if you are a Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're an independent. You have a right to vote. Dean.
Well, I have a,
I want to say something.
I'm not sure where you want to go with this, but I just had something to say about your comment, because I'm an educator myself. So I always tell people, you're tired of talking to people. Imagine me having to talk to 100 kids every day and repeat myself multiple times. That's why I have no issue repeating myself to adults, because those kids that you have to repeat yourself to as children, they grow up to be adults. Those same issues, those issues these people have as grown folks, they had as children, and they just never grew out of it. So the same children that I have issues with now, that I have to repeat stuff to, or that don't get things the first time, it may take them 5 times to get it. I may have to go, no child is the same, just like no adult is the same. Okay, us being on here talking politics, and it may be something that I say that may get to that person's level and they may understand it, whereas they can watch CNN all day and the person is talking in eloquently and in political verbiage, and they'll be looking like, well, what are you talking about? But it takes somebody that can speak that way, but also can speak on that level and bring it to them, and they'll be like, okay, I get it. Yes. So for me, it doesn't matter how much I have to repeat myself, as long as I'm getting through to people, that's all that matters. And I had a couple of points that I wanted to touch on, because I remember Nevaeh saying something about local elections. And yes, local elections are, just like Brandon said as well, are the key to your life. Okay, your city, like I said, your city councilmen, your city councilmen, your mayors, they are just like how you see Donald Trump in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate, and you see the Supreme Court. All of that stuff is on a local level as well. Your mayor is your executive. Your city council is the legislative. They pass the laws. So when stuff happens in your small town or your city or your county that you don't like, it's because those people that you place as city commissioners, or those people that you just was like, oh, I'm not going to vote for that because they don't do nothing. Well, they do a lot. Remember, I think the last recording, I talked about how it shows in Georgia, where in Atlanta, if you get caught with some weed, you don't go to jail. They just fine you. Well, you go down the street to one of the more conservative areas, and they're arresting you, and you're going to spend some time in jail, and you're going to have to show up, and you're going to go to court. So you're not going to get released until you go to court. That's all local. That's all local. That's not even state, because the governor, as you can see, the governor is nowhere in that scenario. That's 2 local governments, 2 city councils that decided how they were going to run their branch. And all the police does and the judges do is they just follow what those laws are. That's it. Because that's all judges can do, is follow the law. They have to, follow whatever laws are placed on the book. Also, just be reminded that Donald Trump has placed 198 appointed 198 judicial seats. And of those 198 judicial seats, not one of those people were African-American or Black. So that should tell you something. Heck, they weren't even Hispanic. So that should tell you something. his purpose isn't to be appointing anybody in power into those, and these are judicial seats, not not local, because there's different branches of the judicial branch as well. But those upper level seats, that's like the next to the Supreme Court, those appellate courts and all that stuff, those people were all white. And most of them were white men. I don't even think it was many white women that he put in those positions. So that should tell you how him and many of the people that he surrounds himself with sees you. They don't have any appeal to you because they're not looking for your vote. They're not looking to help you, or they're not looking to have you placed in any position that you should be placed into. So basically, that's definitely like some stuff that I wanted to kind of touch on. Just remember those 198 judicial seats, people, the next time you say elections don't matter or I'm not going to vote, because those are the people that when your cases have to be appealed and you go in front of those people and you know that they're conservative and they have this viewpoint on marijuana or on abortion or on just like how the young lady who sent her child to the wrong zip code, how she got 5 years, but you have celebrities with money that only gets 6 months or probation. Okay, so it all, again, that stuff matters. So when you're sitting in front of people that don't value you, you can thank yourself for that. You can't thank nobody else, but you can thank yourself for that because you decided that this stuff doesn't matter. But it matters every time you step out your house, even when you're in your house, it matters, because every ounce of government deals with how much you pay in taxes on your house, how much the bank can regulate that you pay on a loan. Why is my interest rate so high? It's because it's because Donald Trump has pulled the wool off of banks charging you high interest rates. Under Obama, they couldn't charge you a interest rate, I think, higher than 15%. Now you have banks, and prior to Obama, I remember people getting student loans and the interest rate was 27%. 27%. That means you're going to be in that loan for 10 to 15 years and you're going to be paying double to triple of what that is. So if you got a $100,000 loan, you're going to be paying $350,000 back to those people. So elections.
So I just wanted to piggyback a little bit and highlight a couple of things. In some cities, they don't have a mayor per se who runs the city. They have a city manager. And it's important to know what your city or your county structure is, because it could change. It could change from city to city within the same state because of how the local laws are set up. When we start talking about federal, state, and local, it is true that the local government.
Michelle, before you go a little further with that, and I just want to go back, because you said, most have a mayor and some have a manager. Before you move, tell us what is the difference between the mayor and someone that is going to be filling a position as manager.
So let me use Newport News. That's where 45 was last night. So in Newport News, Virginia, they have a mayor and they have a city manager, but the city manager controls the money. The city manager controls the money. The city council is the one, and the mayor sits on the city council and the vice mayor sits on the city council, but they control as a group the laws. The mayor may sign it, but they don't have any real separate power, like in a place like New York City, where the mayor wields a good amount of power. But the city manager controls the money, but the city manager is also not elected. They are hired by the city council. So if you don't vote right for your city council, your city manager could be trash. I'm not saying the current city manager of Newport News is trash, but I'm just saying, if your city council is a mess, then very likely your city manager is not going to do what you need, because they're going to do what the city council hired them to do. Okay. But as we talk about federal, we talk about state, and we talk about local, there's times where things overlap. There's times where they intersect. It's important to know that, yes, Dean is 100% right. Nearly 200 judges, and I want to say this clearly, nearly 200 judges have been appointed to the federal bench in 3.75 years, 3.75 years. We're almost done. Prayers up, fingers crossed, whatever you do. Turn around, circle. We need to be done on January 21st. But everything is not lost. A lot of times the press talks about the gloom and doom about it, but doesn't tell us that there's an out. There are 26 Republican seats up in the United States Senate right now. And guess what the Senate has the right to do? They have a right to look at these judges, and if they don't meet minimum requirements, and it's not a lot, but like legit, if you've never tried a case in court, you do not need to be a judge. If you've never served on jury duty or tried a case in court, you do not need to be a judge. It's just simple things. But if we have a democratic—
Well, Michelle, and of course, I'm going to push back. I have to push back because as someone that is, non-biased, you say if you haven't served as a judge or if you haven't been someone that has served as a juror,
I said if you have not tried a case. If you are
Okay.
a lawyer who has not tried a case, you do not belong presiding over case. You don't even know how the courtroom operates.
Well, Donald Trump was not a politician. Donald Trump himself
he
was a reality TV star, and he
did not deserve to be president. I said that in 2015.
And you see what
but black men,
Mm-hmm.
a large portion of black men voted Donald Trump in,
only
and
13%.
he did not have the experience.
Only 13%.
Only 13%. It wasn't a large
13%.
13%.
How large is the population? How large is our population in general?
But
So
here's
we
the
can-
thing.
we
If you
can-
really
we
want
can
to talk about it,
and say-
94% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton. And so we still didn't get her. But what I'm saying is, if what we can see is this, okay? The same people who voted for him and think he's doing an okay job, he has put people on the appellate court who will take every right you have. That's the bare bones of it. They will take every right you have. Why? Because when the Constitution was ratified, Black people were still property. And so if they interpret the Constitution based on what it originally meant, we will have no rights whatsoever. We will be put back in a place where you could, because you don't have a job, you could be forced into you could be put in jail and forced into labor, which is what our prison system is right now. They force them into labor and don't pay them fairly. If you think $7.25 an hour is not a reasonable minimum wage, you can bet that it'll be $7.25 for another 20 years if we do not address what needs to be addressed. So what I'm saying about the Senate is, if there is a veto-proof majority in the Senate, and Dean can confirm this, which is 67, the magic number is 67. We need to hold every seat we have and add 20 seats. These are the things that will happen. We will have a HEROES Act. We will have a living wage. And those 198 judges, all of their records will be reviewed. And if there is a majority, every one of them who the US Senate says must be recalled, and there's history, they've done it before, they can recall every one of them and put a different judge and confirm a different judge into that space, who will then, we believe, based on their prior rulings, etc., be more apt to be balanced and for the people. Okay, so, and for the people means that if you committed a crime, they represent the people, the person, not just the person you committed the crime against, but the entire community. That's their way of saying it's not acceptable in the community what you did. And so that's why these elections become important. The same thing goes when you move down to the state level. Medicaid expansion in Virginia happened because of the legislature. That's why it happened, because of the legislature. But and so as you drill down things that you need, you start to see them become more localized. But if you need SNAP in this time, right now, that comes first. It's the money, it comes from the federal government and part from the state, but the state disperses it all. If they don't have accurate census numbers, where you live could be impacted. If they don't have accurate census numbers, you could lose your congressional district or be pushed into another congressional district, because they look at it by numbers. What's the population? By X, every congressional district has X number of people in it. When they reach that number, then they create another congressional district if the others are already filled. This is how it works. We don't have a clue. We don't have a clue. And so when you don't have a voting place, not because they turned your voting location into a COVID center, not that, but because you didn't do your census, so they don't think you need a voting place. So now you got to take the bus across town or drive 20 minutes because you didn't complete your census. You didn't vote. They don't know that you're there. And so it's deep. Voting is deep.
To your point, hold on 1 second, Dean, because I have to go to Brandon next, because Brandon's been waiting. To your point though, Michelle, on the census, I had been asked a question because I don't know if you all saw the Golden Girls reenactment.
Mm-hmm.
And with that reenactment, and what ended up happening at the end, they started asking the questions about, has anyone done the census and all of that stuff? Well, one person said they hadn't done it, but at the end, and at the beginning, maybe, I don't know if I can't remember if it's at the end or the beginning, the advertisement is huge about voting and the census, but to have someone actually playing a role to admit, no, I haven't done it yet, but this, and these are Black prominent people, right? You have not done this yet. You are participating in something that is advocating and has been pushing how important and how imperative it is that we complete the census, right? Mm-hmm. That we go out here and we encourage everybody to vote. It kind of baffled me. And the person said, one of the people said, oh, it's okay that you hadn't done it. And at the end, my response was, no, it's not okay. It is not okay that all of this time has passed and you are on a national level, you are on a national platform, and you are advocating and you are pushing people to do something that you have not even done yourself. We are in a climate, and it is with the church, it is with musicians, it is with celebrities, it is with producers, it is with the news media, it is with podcasts, it is with blogs, etc., where you have people on platforms, nationally, internationally syndicated talk show hosts, radio hosts, that you are forcing people to go out here and do something that you have not done. The census, no money, that's the part of voting to me. I look at the census as part of voting. Brandon, to you, is that part of voting? And please, again, go ahead and fill in. And then after you, Nevaeh, I'm going to bring you in because I do have a question for you as well.
Going back to what I said before, the census is so important, but all of this connects because this administration has tried to suppress the census count because this administration wanted to put on the census, are you a U.S. citizen? They wanted to put that question on the census. The Supreme Court came back and said, no, you can't do that. And that's why this all connects, because who you vote for president can appoint people to the Supreme Court, who then can chime in and hopefully check the administration sometime and say, hey, no, you can't do this, because the president wanted to add that question to the census as a way to try to hopefully suppress or to intimidate immigrants. I also have a really deep knowledge in immigration. I didn't say that on the introduction, but I actually really do. And so with the administration was trying to intimidate immigrants from filling out the census. So that way communities, often Black and brown communities, often also have a lot of immigrants, would not want to fill out the census, and so therefore would maybe not receive as much funding because it wasn't an accurate population count from those communities. So all of it connects. And also, and I think going back to what we said earlier is, I forgot who said, I don't know, I forget it was you, Ray, but when we talked about speaking to folks who may not be US citizens, and my knowledge and experience in immigration has made me appreciate being able to have the right to vote that much more, because we do this in various aspects of our lives. When we have a right to do something, we take it for granted. And sometimes it might take an outside person to show us how powerful, say, voting is. Because what I've learned too is that saying that argument about your forefathers had, fought for us to vote and that kind of thing, which is very accurate and very true and needs to be respected. But that's not, that a lot of people, especially nowadays, don't care about that. They're not thinking about that in terms of whether or not they choose to vote or not. We have to make it relatable. We have to get to people's emotions. And I think that's how we can help increase voter turnout. Because those type of arguments don't necessarily, it's just not going to reach some people, the people that we need to reach. Because going back to what I said, or what we talked about, all politics are local, and we really need to have an interest in our communities. And one of the ways we do that is through voting. And so in my area, we call the county manager, we call it the county executive. So the county executive is kind of governs our local area. And because of, in my view, the federal government's neglect of responding to the coronavirus, a lot of communities, local communities had to step in, and states had to step in and really put these different policies and restrictions in place to try to help us curb the spread of the coronavirus. So example, in my area, in my area, the county executive determined, what could be open, what phase we're in, and that kind of thing, which, of course, the coronavirus has affected our community much higher rates. But it just goes back to say, that's why also, just tying it together, that's why local politics is very important, because our local government often will step in when the federal government does not. So.
Thank you. Dean, one second. I promise you, I'm gonna come to you, Dean. I promise you.
I just wanted to hit on his thing, and the one reason why our community was impacted by coronavirus the most is because we're always considered the essential workers. Our community
right
to drive the bus, they had to take the bus to go work at, because a large amount of our community works in those low income jobs that pay us only $7.25 an hour. So our people are getting infected by coronavirus for $7.25 and no health insurance. And again, that goes back to who you vote in as your governor and as your mayor. Because if your minimum wage is only $7.25 and the cost of living is $1,100 for an apartment, that's a problem. That means you have to work 2 jobs just to even feed yourself, not even mentioning your if you have kids. So I'm glad that Brandon brought that up about the coronavirus and how it impacts our communities. But we have to look at the deeper reason why our communities got impacted more. Because I tell people I lived in an area called Brookhaven. My white counterparts, just like how I was out there riding my bike while coronavirus was going on, people that looked like me had to go to work still. I got to work from home and still get paid, but people that looked like me had to go to a job and got sick because people decided they wanted to go into Walmart and other places with no mask on and infect them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Many of our people can't work from home. They can't telework.
You
You know,
can't telework at Walmart.
Sure can't.
Well, to that point, and you're right. I hear you. I have been around a time or two to stores, and yeah, I'm working on the story now. I'll just say that I'm working on the story now. I see all the
Mhm.
signs that say wear a mask here, wear a mask there, but when I walk into your establishment, sir and ma'ams, I don't see people abiding by these rules, sir and ma'ams, that you as business owners have put up, sir and ma'am. And I'm not just talking to those that are white. These are Black owned businesses, right? Sir and ma'am, if you put up a sign that has asked your constituents to please, your clients, your customer, whatever term you choose to use, to wear a mask, we should be implementing, we should be forcing these people. Listen, there are certain things. I told a friend of mine, he's dealing with COVID now. Turn your phone off, turn your computer off. He's a business owner. Take care of yourself first, right? Because guess what? You're gonna die. We all gonna die eventually. But if you die before your time for something that is preventable, people gonna shed tears and they're gonna move right on along. Just the same, if you die here, now with this upcoming election, we're gonna shed tears. You're gonna have a service that's gonna be viral. And guess what's gonna happen? The world is still going to move on. But to that, Nevaeh, I did speak with someone, and I have always said that they are essential workers. Teachers are essential workers. They are unequivocally
Mhm.
essential workers. So when I was hearing all the dialogue and all of the exchange about whether a teacher is essential and or not, if it's not for our teachers, we wouldn't be educated, really. Someone has taken the time. And I also spoke with a teacher who says, I don't know if Halifax does or doesn't, but they don't even teach civics, right, anymore. It is not just one school that doesn't, it is several schools. They have completely taken civics out of the educational realm for our students. How important is it for you that civics be taught, history, real history be taught in school? What do you feel about that?
Well, for one, I mean, the fact that they took it out is crazy to me. I know in Halifax, we take civics, we take civics in middle school. You get to high school, we take U.S. history, we take world history, and we take government. So we're stacked up on history, government, civics, all of that. It's very important specifically because a lot of people, and I will say that my history teachers, they have done a great job. I don't think that I've had a history teacher who has ever taught me fake history, which is extremely important. A lot of my history teachers, they tell me straight up. Especially with US history, I'm grateful to also have had Black US history teachers, and they taught me real history. It's important for people to know, especially I'm really looking forward to government. I haven't taken ES next semester, but to know just about our country, to know about the history of the world, know about how the United States fits into it, as well as learn about government. I feel like that is going to be a very good class. I feel like every school should have a government class. It's a requirement for me to get my associate's degree, so I have to take it, but I feel like everybody should have to take it to just really get in depth on how our government runs, how it operates. And I just feel like it's extremely important because if you don't know your history, if you're not educated on your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And that is a fact that's been proven. If you're not educated, if you don't follow it, and I would say 2020 has been a great, it's really let you get into people's characters because you know how people acted in 2020, how they would act in the 1960s and the civil rights movement. You get to see exactly what side of history people would be on all throughout history. And it shows how uneducated people actually are on the history. if you knew what happened in the civil rights movement, if you knew what happened in the past, you wouldn't still be having these same arguments in 2020. So I feel like it's very important for people to be educated on both sides so that we can stop having these Black against white, we can stop having this Democrat against Republican, and just, you know, come together and just really understand that there are going to be differences, there are going to be opposite sides, but at the end of the day, we saw what happened in the past. And especially one thing I like to bring up, this is just something I've been thinking about. And George Washington, you know, he wasn't a perfect person, but he said in the beginning, two-party system, not it. Two-party system, not it. Don't have two political parties. It's just going to be problems for everybody. Now, as you see the state of our government, two political parties. We have more, but they have the way that we have set this country up, they have no chance of winning a presidential election. They don't even let them go to the debates. There are people signing petitions, trying to sign petitions just to get other presidential candidates to go to the debates. As you can see, it's not going to happen. This country has literally set us up for failure, making us think that you have to be attached to one specific political party and it has to be Democrat or Republican. And people aren't educated on the other political parties. And that way they have no chance. You have to fight to even get on the ballot if you're not a Democrat or Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say,
So, help the
I'm
people
completely
understand
against two-party system.
what are some of the other parties? Tell the people, because this is where we want them to know.
Okay, well, I don't really know all of them because the new ones pop up all the time, but I know some of the main ones. This year, Libertarian Party this year, I've seen more about the Libertarian Party this year than I've seen in any past election. Jo Jorgensen, actually, she has like a cult fan base at this point. They're crazy Jo Jorgensen supporters. I actually read into what she believes in. It's honestly, I mean, it's not that bad. A lot of it isn't that bad, but a lot of her supporters are just, I don't even know what to say about them. They're just Republicans. Most of her supporters are just Republicans. They attacked her. She got attacked. People said, I'm not voting for her anymore because she made a post about Black Lives Matter. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, I think her as a person, her policies aren't that bad. I think her supporters are just Republicans. But I mean, then there's like the Green Party as well. I can't remember the rest of them. There's a lot
There's
of
the
them.
Working Families Party.
You have the Progressive Party.
Yeah.
I'll admit the woman that's running for president here in Georgia at the Black Lives Matter protest. But I loved what Nevaeh said about the Libertarian Party. And as she was talking, that's why I was sitting here looking like this, because I'm like, those libertarians are the same people. They came over to the Republican Party back in 2014, 2016, and they were big Trump supporters. Many of the Trump supporters you see now were libertarian. So I don't play with libertarians, even as a former Republican, because I'm just like, some of y'all are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. With some of the mindset that they have, and some of Jo Jorgensen supporters are disgruntled Bernie supporters as well. Correct.
Yeah, and a lot of the people from like the Boogaloo movement are Jo Jorgensen supporters as well.
I'm sorry for those that might be listening. You said the Boogaloo.
The Boogaloo.
What is the Boogaloo?
They are white nationalists. Let's just call it what it is. They are
Mike
white
Dunn.
nationalists.
If anybody knows who Mike Dunn, Ray, I don't know how much we told you about Mike Dunn, but Mike Dunn, that's him.
They're what the KKK is without the hoodies. They don't mind showing who they are because they're telling you, this is me, and I have money, and I have influence, and I'm going to make sure that the white power movement continues to run this country. So people that are in the Boogaloo movement, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of those people are people that kind of infiltrated a lot of these businesses and a lot of these police forces, and they're making the decisions that keep people like us from getting into places and spaces. I would say that much.
Yeah.
So
if you recall, during the reopen movements that were happening around the country at the beginning of COVID, you saw a lot of the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys strapping on their automatic weapons and getting in the faces of police officers and yelling and threatening them and threatening governors. Governor Cooper here in North Carolina, they threatened Governor Northam there in Virginia. They threatened Governor Whitmer in Michigan and other governors around the country. And they are a part of militias as well. Like this, it's all intertwined. And so the Boogaloo Boys, they're the ones who always go around talking about the silent majority. That they talk about that a lot. But they are equally as dangerous. In Minnesota, when the police came forward and said, well, we need to tell you who was actually rioting, they said it was the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys that were setting things off, and then people were defending themselves. But it was the Boogaloo Boys who were responsible. Same in Richmond, same all over the country, in Portland, in Louisville. It's not new.
That's why the FBI direct came out specifically to Congress and said the biggest national security in this country is white supremacy. He was speaking to those groups because those groups, all of the rioting that was going on in most of these major cities when we were out protesting was done by white nationalists. They went into these communities, burnt things down to paint this picture that is African American. That's why a lot of them were covered up. A lot of the people that were burned this, and you have you have Republicans say that's Antifa. That's not Antifa. Those are those white supremacists who come into and infiltrate because they can, because we're supposed to be wearing masks. So what better way to infiltrate right now than to cover my whole body up and go burn some stuff down and then blame it on Black Lives Matter people. And then I can get on my platform and say, see, this is why Black Lives doesn't matter, or this is why the Black Lives Matter movement is a terrorist group. So they're doing the dirty work. They're doing the dirty work of the president, technically, to be completely honest. And that's why he doesn't go out and speak against them, because most of them, 99.9% of them are his supporters. And like Michelle said, that whole silent majority thing, they're right when they say there's a silent majority of white people that think like that. They just don't come out and say it. These are the outspoken people, but there is a large group of them that believe the same way that those people do, that they stay silent until it's time to vote. And then people wonder why, when Black people stay home in like a certain area, where in Florida, Donald Trump won by 100,000 votes, but 2.5 million African Americans in South Florida alone stayed home. Those people are the people that's voting for your elected officials, and those elected officials are going to not only affect the people that voted, but it's going to affect y'all 2.5 million people that decided to stay home too.
But we have to be careful when they talk about who stayed home, because part of that is because felons can't vote. The other part of that is that if you are a registered voter and there was an issue with your ballot and you didn't receive your notification, or you took a provisional ballot and you didn't go back in time with your ID or whatever else you were supposed to present, then your ballot could have been set aside or was set aside. And if you go to look at your voting record, it shows that you didn't vote, even if you know you went to the poll and you did something. And so that's a way that they get to us. It used to be in North Carolina, if you use an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, because they are synonymous, they're not different. They try to make you think it's different, but they're not. You used to have 2 witnesses. Who's finding 2 witnesses in COVID, right? And so now they said 1. Which is still could be a problem if you don't live near someone, or you're so sick that you don't let people in your house. Whatever the issue is, you still could be precluded from voting. And so when they say 2.5 million people didn't vote, it could be that their ballot was one of those thousands of ballots that was found in Broward County later. It was a whole bunch of stuff going on. And so we have to be so aware, and then we have to prepare. We have to literally, NBC News has a whole platform called Plan Your Vote. and the whole thing is so people can understand what they need to do in their state and then plan accordingly.
Not only that, but
to that point,
some states also have it where you can track your ballots or you can track your vote. So if you're a part of one of those states, make sure you do that. And I think, Michelle, you're in North Carolina, but didn't they just pass something in North Carolina where I think felons can vote even if they have a
certain felons can vote.
Even if
And
they
in Virginia, they have something similar where nonviolent felons who have completed their probation or their time in jail and or their probation, if they've had it, they can register to vote. But Virginia is very, very tricky. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you have to petition to the governor in order to have your voting rights restored. And if you are a violent felon, you cannot have your voting rights restored. So what you do is, I have to tell y'all how easy it is. You can do it from your phone. You can Google voter right restoration for felon, governor, Virginia on your phone, and it will come up and the website will come up and you press it. You can complete in Virginia the form on your phone to have your voting rights restored.
Michelle,
they don't tell you that.
Put that in the chat box and on Instagram as well, because a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people don't understand that. And before 2 o'clock actually hits, I want to say to each panelist, I do want to say, if you have to leave, if you must leave at 2 o'clock, I thank you for your time. If you do need to leave, can you do this real quick? Because I'm gonna look and see. Because I always extend the extra 30 minutes, especially because sometimes the comments and the questions come from the viewers. And then sometimes you all would like to expound. And I appreciate you for accepting this 2 hours. I didn't see any fingers go up. So good, thank you. To you all's point, what I want to ask you, I think I already know the answer. So I want to play it from the opposite side. We always hear that there's white privilege, and there are I have read tons of messages from white people that say, yes, we do have white privilege and we own it and we apologize for it, right? Do you feel that, is there such thing as Black privilege, Nevaeh? Is there such thing as Black privilege as it relates to the election and the process?
Specifically to the election, like,
do you feel that answer, yeah, that to the election, but also beyond the election, is there Black privilege?
Okay, I don't think there's Black privilege. I think that anything that can be seen as Black privilege is more of a form of reparations. That's how I see it. So that's my answer.
Okay, Brandon.
I think it can appear like we have Black privilege. For example, for myself, I haven't had to go physically into the office to work since March. So I've been able to telework ever since then full time. Mm-hmm. But when I say it can appear but still I feel as a Black man, I still have to make sure I perform this job at a much higher level than, say, my white counterparts, because if something comes down, I feel like I'm going to get the brunt of it more than my white counterparts sometimes. Now, I will say overall, I think I work in a very good office, but that's what I mean by, yeah, you might have some privilege, but it's like maybe to a certain extent, because even to have the quote unquote privilege, you may have had to work 3 times as hard to get to where you are versus a Caucasian person or even some other group of person. So.
Come on, Michelle. I saw your lips move. I saw them quiver.
I was typing about restorevirginia.gov on the Facebook page. So Black privilege is not a thing. It's not a thing. What allows us measures of privilege could be if you're heterosexual, if you're Christian, if you might be a business owner, so you have some autonomy that would give you privilege. But Black privilege doesn't exist because this skin has been weaponized. So we don't have Black privilege. The fight over reparations is clear as to how much privilege we really have. Because if you really want to talk about reparations, when the enslaved were freed, their former owners received up to $350 per freed formerly enslaved person. Yet the enslaved were freed with nothing, not a boot, not a strap, not a morsel of food. And that is why they could create the Black codes before even Jim Crow, to violate the amendments that were passed to ensure our freedom. If you look at World War II and the internment camps, the Japanese and their first generation descendants thereafter received reparations for being forced into these internment camps, especially on the West Coast. When you consider these things, we don't have Black privilege. We have fight for it privilege, because we will be fighting until the day we die. And our generations will be fighting as well, because this country is not interested in actually resolving the issue. If they were interested in resolving the issue, believe me, it would have been resolved. When you look at the fact that, let me put it this way, when you have LeBron James's son looking at an HBCU, that tells you how privileged we are not, because he knows at 17 years old that he will be safer amongst Black people than at the PWI, who's like, you're LeBron James' son. Come on, we'll give you everything you want. But the one thing they can't give him is safety in numbers. They can't do it. And so when you look at it, there's no such thing as Black privilege, just as there's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no such thing as a lot of things that people try to tell us exist. Black people just need to not be lazy. You don't even know the half. We are far from lazy. We will make $1 out of 15 cents.
Well, let me ask this question. Dean. I'm coming to you, Dean. Let me ask this question, because pretty much everybody is saying we don't have a Black privilege, right? How can we start to gain some privilege, especially as it relates to voting? What needs to be done, or what can be done, so that we can gain it? Everybody asks for your votes. Everybody wants the Black vote. Everybody wants the brown vote. But how can we, as a body, right, of people, how can we start to gain some privilege? Professor, teacher, help us to understand how we can do this. Dean.
Oh, you're asking me. I don't think as long as this country is predominantly white, we probably will never have privilege. And that's one of the things that I was trying to say in the previous comment, is that Black people we don't have Black privilege. That's a term that was coined by white people or by our white counterparts because they see equality happening. For them, Black privilege is when we're able to step into their spaces that they feel like we don't deserve to be in. Mm-hmm. That's why they say Black privilege. And a lot of the times they say the people that say Black privilege are the white people that couldn't get into those spaces themselves, but they see Black people in them. So they feel like, oh, you only got into that space because your color, because remember they had this whole idea about the quota thing. Not that you were smarter than them, not that your SAT scores were higher than theirs, but because you were Black and you met a quota. Remember, there was a whole lawsuit that the young lady had, the white young lady had, because she didn't get into a certain school because she said that a black person took her place. Mm-hmm. So we probably won't ever touch Black privilege, because as long as the white people are the majority in this country. Just like Michelle was talking about reparations. The reason why we aren't getting reparations is because a huge majority of white people would go haywire if we are given those reparations. And that'll be another term for them to come up with, where we gave you guys what you wanted, and that'll be another thing for them to say, we gave you what you wanted and you still aren't succeeding. Mm-hmm. And just like Michelle said, back in the day when slavery was over, a lot of people's ancestors left those plantations with nothing but the clothes on their back. We weren't given in, the government didn't put together any plans. They didn't put any institutions in place. They didn't give any type of monies to help African Americans. I mean, the most we got were HBCUs, which dawned out of us begging certain people for money. We had to beg them for money. Until this day, we have to beg them for money to give to HBCUs because, as you know, the state HBCUs and state PWIs get two different allocations of money.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State and FAMU get two different allocations of money, even though they both have Florida citizens in them, even though they both have huge amounts of alumni, huge amounts of students, and they're both in the same city. They're both in Tallahassee, across the street.
But since you're talking about money, Dean, since you're talking about money, right?
Mhm.
One of the words that you always hear from Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and let me just say, I think it was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They wore this word out. My ears were literally ringing. A PAC. What is a PAC? Help us understand. And yes, to everybody out there, I say us because I have these questions that don't just come from me, but from the unspoken, on different platforms. Help us to understand, what is a PAC? How does a PAC work? And you don't have to give me everything because I definitely know Brandon knows and Michelle knows as well as Nebe. Help us understand, what is a PAC? Is that coming from my credit card? Is it coming from my bank account, or what? Help us.
A PAC is basically where a group of people who have similar interests put their monies together and they work on Capitol Hill to try to get things passed. They use their money and influence to do it. I'm trying to remember. Some PACs that you'll see is like those Christian PACs that's on the conservative side. People even consider the NRA a PAC. They get the more people you have, the more money you have, the more influence you have over politicians. Hence why when people say, certain things won't go away, the reason, another PAC would be considered the police unions. At this point, those are PACs because they pay into those. Teachers unions are considered PACs. So these unions are PACs. Some PACs don't even have PAC after their name. Just know it's when people come together with a similar interest to make sure that the things that they need to get done in their platforms get done. And they use politics because, again, everybody else seems to know that politics plays a big role in changing things, but some people in our community. But
Okay,
I'm sure
thank you.
Michelle and Brandon.
Another word, interest group. Some people call them interest groups as well. Yeah, because a lot of times some people will argue that political PACs are the most powerful thing in politics, because these PACs are often the ones, like Dean said, they're sticking together for one, but they're often the ones who are funding these politicians' campaigns. Who they donate large numbers of money to your campaign with the expectation that if you remain in office or you get elected to office, you're going to look out for our interests above all else.
Right.
And I think that, Republicans are especially good at that, in my view, coming down to the NRA and the fight for the Second Amendment, for, even down to this Supreme Court situation. No matter what, these interest groups, these PACs are saying, hey, you better make sure that no matter what, you do this for us, because remember what we've done for you, or we're not going to continue to fund your re-election campaign.
Right.
Because I think the Supreme Court situation has opened up this. I mean, it's so much to unpack with the Supreme Court situation with the judicial judges, because what they're doing is they're making sure that no matter if Trump is reelected or not, that Supreme Court is red. That Supreme Court red meaning conservative leaning. Because I do think that it's unfortunate in regard that the Supreme Court has become so politicized, but that's what they're doing. And McConnell, he has PACs representing him, or he's working with PACs, I should say. to make sure that, hey, this is your number one priority to make sure that you do X, Y, and Z.
So are PACs local? Are they local? Are they just specifically geared for politics? Those in these elected offices.
Well, a PAC is a political action committee.
Right.
That is, so it is political in its
Political in nature.
intent. But the other thing that we have to understand about PACs is we rarely form them. We black
Who is
people,
we?
black people rarely form them. There are a few out there. There's one that's specifically called Black PAC. I myself formed one. But the way that I decided to work it means it takes a little longer to get it off of the ground, because PACs impact federal, state, and local elections. Okay. And so they run the gamut on what they do and where their impact lies. But we have to do a couple of things, and I want to circle back. One of those things that we have to do is we actually have to read and understand the United States Constitution. Because during these last several years, the Republicans have been working on this whole control the judiciary for 40 years, right? Like single-sidedness, we need that. So that no matter who comes and who goes in the other two, we need that, because that's going to decide. That's going to break all ties. That's going to decide that whether the president and or the Congress were right to do what they did. And even if they were right, if the court says they're wrong, it's over. We have to understand that we don't understand. Most Americans don't understand, and this is across racial lines, what the Constitution actually says. The Constitution actually says in the First Amendment that the press is protected. But I guarantee you, if we get another 4 years of this guy, the press won't be protected. The First Amendment guarantees peaceful assembly to protest. We get this guy for another 4 years, that's out the window too. The First Amendment allows for freedom of religion. That doesn't mean freedom to be Christian and all else be darned. It means that you are free to practice any religion that you so choose, even if it is the worship of your pinky toe on your left foot, or to be free of any religion of any sort. It does not cover meeting in churches without a mask in the middle of a pandemic, and then you want to go to Walmart without a mask and kill 250 people. No. That's not what the First Amendment means. But we have twisted the First Amendment to where we listen to little snippets of what people say that it means, and we never pick it up and read it for ourselves. That's why we know that there's a little line in the 13th Amendment that says you can lose your freedom when you go to jail. Everybody's like, oh, the 13th Amendment gave us our freedom. But there's a little line in there that says if you go to jail, you forfeit your freedom. We don't know what it says, and then we listen to people twist it. Like Dean said, we don't even know what our state constitution says. I remember sitting with one of the senators currently in the Senate from Virginia. And when he asked what I thought he needed to do, I said, you need to come out and say very openly that you want to deschedule marijuana. It should not be a federal offense. It should not preclude you when you're 15 and you get caught with some weed. You can't get a student loan. You can't do all of these things. And your whole life is set up from what for a white child would be a mistake. For us, it's the whole community is just rotten. And he took that in. I said, and don't like put it on the last page of your website, like at a line at the bottom. You need to talk about it. And he began to talk about it. And he actually worked with someone to introduce legislation that is languishing on the Senate floor right now. right now. 500 pieces of legislation are languishing in the Senate right now from the House of Representatives. But if we keep these people and we aren't invested in the system, if your child has asthma, they may not get medical insurance, or it'll be at a cost that is cost prohibitive to your family. Their medication may become cost prohibitive to your family. If your Nana needs diabetic medication, it may be cost prohibitive for her. And it may take 5 of you all to buy her 1 month's worth of medicine. This is what we're looking at when we don't vote. These are the things. We don't make voting practical. I remember when they tried to do ACA one time before. I lived in the Newport News area, and I rolled up on some dude with a Make America Great Again hat on. And I said to him, his wife and his mother-in-law were in the store. And I was like, it's a great day, isn't it? It was nice and sunny and all this stuff. And I was like, if they repeal ACA, she's gonna have to come live with you. And his face was like, what do you mean? I was like, ACA has a provision for nursing home care. And he was like, oh no. And there was a whole bunch of expletives. And I was like, have a good day. I'm that kind of person. But it became real to him because he didn't want her living with him.
But that's because people, and they don't realize that the ACA helps them so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's always been this problem with me with Democrats is they don't push the ACA. Like the ACA has helped so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And just like she was saying, I tell people, you have to look at what was life like for you when it came to hospital visits and medicine prior to 2008. That's where you're going to go back to with a conservative Supreme Court justice or with 4 years of Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell at the Senate.
Stay right there. Stay right there, Dean. Stay right there, Dean, because it's 2:30 is swiftly approaching. So I'm going to interrupt you right here, but I want you to speak first, okay? So with that, Senator Ted Cruz, I was watching the news, and Senator Ted Cruz, and I believe it was I think he was the former mayor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, right? They have had some of the same talking points as it relates to President Trump, as it relates to him putting forth his nominee and being confirmed. And they both have made a statement, and it's not just them, but again, I was watching in the news and just so happened they were speaking that it's not a matter of party, right? But that it's a matter of what they would consider checks and balances. And the reality says that 29 times there has been a vacancy, and it's the president's task to nominate, and it is the Senate's job to confirm, right? So they've argued when the Senate has been the same party, which is 19 times, they have confirmed 17 of them. And when they were different, which has been 10 times, that of those, only 2 were confirmed. So they've stated that America voted in Trump, right? And they voted so that he can secure these justice seats. It didn't matter, I think it was Justice Scalia, right? He was voted in, he got it so he can secure that seat. And now, of course, with the notorious RBG, rest her soul, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that appears to be the case. So the question that I have, right, is twofold, and everybody, I want everybody on this panel to answer these questions. And after you answer the questions, leave a tidbit of why please, of why it is imperative to vote outside of this next one. But why are Democrats so upset about Donald Trump trying to put in his nominee, especially given the fact that my question also is, do you not think the Democratic Party would be pushing the same thing if it was a Democratic president and the Senate was controlled by Democrats? Do you not think the Democrats would also be pushing for the same thing?
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is what happened with President Barack Obama. Like, I don't think that would be.
Help me understand. When Obama was in office, well, the Senate was controlled by a Republican Party, yes?
Right. So
their argument is, Dean, if Obama was in office and the Senate was controlled by the Democratic Party and a vacancy had came forth, do you actually think the Democratic Party would not be trying to slide in to fill that vacancy?
Again, I don't think that's the issue. The issue comes in is that happened when President, and this was 9 months before the election even happened, before the 2016 election happened. The problem is people are hating the hypocrisy of Mitch McConnell, which is why so many people are pushing for the Senate to get out of the hands of Republicans because of all of the hypocrisy that's going on. With 500 bills sitting in the Senate right now that's geared towards helping the American people, and Mitch McConnell hasn't touched none of them, but he's taken the time to stop all of that to fill a Supreme Court justice vacancy. A lot of these bills are COVID bills. A lot of these bills are justice reform bills. But you want to fill the vacancy of the Supreme Court justice when just 4 years ago, Barack Obama had a chance to fill that seat, and it was 9 months into the election, you told him no, and you think that the next president should choose the next Supreme Court justice. We are less than 45 days from an election, and we're going to have a lame duck Senate and a lame duck president, because technically this is the first president to pick someone to choose a Supreme Court justice after he's been impeached. So we have an impeached president choosing a Supreme Court justice with a lame duck Senate that has 500 bills on the line and hasn't passed anything. Also, this is the first time I'm not gonna say first time because it happened before, but this is the first time that we've seen the hypocrisy happen where, and I think that's the reason why so many Democrats are upset, is because the same standards you held in 2016 should be the same standards you hold in 2020. So I think most people are the same way. Had they allowed President Obama to pick, because they didn't even give his pick a hearing. So his pick didn't even get to go to the Senate floor and have a vote. They didn't even allow that to happen. So to me, to be completely honest, Mitch McConnell and he didn't fulfill his constitutional right within that moment when he didn't allow President Obama to have his Supreme Court justice pick go to the Senate. Heck, he should be doing time for that. He should be going to jail for that. Just like Donald Trump should be going to jail for a lot of stuff, but that's neither here nor there, because that's what people don't realize is when these people are held to they raise their hand on and they swear an oath to the country. And Mitch McConnell hasn't fulfilled his oath to this country since he's been the Senate majority leader. Again, we got people dying of COVID. We have people that still are in the hole from the 3 months that people weren't employed. But you're going to fill this Supreme Court justice seat. And again, that's why, and I'm gonna give you your tidbits, and that's why elections matter. Because right now, y'all could have had 4 months of COVID relief, $1,200, if y'all would have had a Democratic Senate. But we are where we are. So we're in a pandemic, and a lot of us aren't getting help because we have the wrong people sitting in office that put party over the people. And that's all.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate you. Michelle, I'm coming to you next. My question, do you not think Democrats would have tried to slide it in regardless as to former President Obama in the now, if there was a Democratic president and the Senate was controlled by Democrats?
So I have to actually co-sign with Dean here, because the issue, when Antonin Scalia died just before the 2016 election, 9 months or so before, the whole debacle of what we see now started when Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and the rest of them said, oh, it's so close to the election, we should wait and let the people decide. But see, what people don't do is, first of all, I should backtrack. I am not surprised. I expect a liar to lie. I expect a cheater to cheat. This is the same person who said in another interview, if Hillary Clinton wins, the court is just going to be 8-8 until she's gone. Same man. See, so you have to hear, they speak with forked tongues, and you have to hear both sides. And so now we're in a place where the election is imminent. I mean, I got some issues because she should have retired in 2010, but that's another story. But see, if we go back to 2016, I said that Obama should have called everybody's bluff and nominated a Black woman who is part of the LGBT, who's a judge, who's a federal judge for the Supreme Court, because it would have been blood on the floor, because the LGBT would have been like, you're ignoring us. It would have been an entirely different election. Black people would have been in an uproar too. Women would have been in an uproar too. You would have had the three most consistent voting blocks in this country almost perfectly aligned, based on them saying, we're not letting her get out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, let alone get a hearing on the floor. It would have been over. So now we come now, and it's like, hold on. You said if it was 9 months, there should be no vote, but now it's less than 8 weeks, and you're rushing this vote to the floor. But because 45 can't keep his trap shut, he told us why it's important. He said, because I won't win without them. I'm pulling away all the repetitive language, and we have to learn how to be like him. People retain what he says because he says it over and over and over again. I must hear him say that voting by mail is a scam 100 times a week. So his sycophants think voting by mail is a scam.
Michelle, do you think, my question is,
No.
you think?
No.
Okay.
Not in the same way. If
you can't, no, and not in the same way.
No, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. No, not in the same way, meaning they wouldn't have said we need to wait before and now we're going to do it now. They would have done it before and now. There would have been continuity of action. This is a whole nother thing. And that's where we
Thank you. I got to get to everybody else. I know. I told you y'all always get turned up at the end. Nevaeh, my question to you. Same question. Do you think Democrats would have tried to slide it on in here and get this seat filled?
Yes. I mean, politics is politics. Yes. This the game. You got to play it. They definitely would have.
Thank you. Brandon, same question. Do you think they would have?
I think they would have in this instance because of what the Republicans did in 2016, like Dean and Michelle were saying, because Republicans set a precedent when they decided to deny Obama from Merrick Garland even getting a hearing. And we were talking about 9 months from the election, not 39 days away. So I do think that I feel as though if the Republicans had allowed the nominee Obama's nominee to get to the Supreme Court, then I feel as though the Democrats it wouldn't be all this backlash now for Trump to nominate whoever, to nominate another judge to the Supreme Court, because that's why, like we talked about earlier, it goes back to hypocrisy. It goes back to, okay, hey, it's all of a sudden constitutional or to do it this way, but when it's convenient for us, we're going to ignore the Constitution. We're going to do what we need to do, and we're going to play the game like Nevaeh just said. So ultimately, yeah, I think that, what's fair is fair. Republicans are responsible for this precedent that they set, because ultimately, if they hadn't set a precedent, I do think that, yeah, if you want to talk about the Constitution does say that the president can appoint a Supreme Court justice with the advice and consent from the Senate. It does not say that the president can do that every year and except an election year. But if the Republicans are going to do it this way, then it's only fair for the Democrats to do it too. So,
Brandon, wrapping up, give me 1 or 2 words to tell your constituents to vote.
vote, 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 vote.
Michelle.
Vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yeah, it does.
Dean.
Vote. That's all I'm gonna say.
Nevaeh, to your constituents, especially those that are not eligible to vote, what would you share with your peers and with those of us that choose not to vote?
I would say definitely educate yourself on candidates, educate yourself on policy, so that if you can't vote now, when you can vote, you already know who to vote for. Don't wait until the last second, the month before the election, to start Googling and comparing. And also, don't vote for somebody just because, and I'm saying this because a whole bunch of Republicans are voting for Trump, and if they looked into Trump, they wouldn't agree with half the stuff he says. Don't vote for somebody simply because of political party. Actually look into what they're doing. I was driving down the road the other day, and I saw Republicans for Biden sign, and I almost stopped in the middle of the road in Halifax County. A Republicans for Biden sign. So it's possible. Please look into candidates. Don't just vote because they're Republican or because they're Democrat.
But
Thank
also,
you.
if I could to add really quickly, that I think a lot of times what we do is we be looking for this perfect candidate, right? But also
Right.
understand that there's more than just a candidate on the ballot. The Supreme Court's on the ballot, healthcare is on the ballot, social justice is on the ballot. So I think we have to keep all that in mind too when we go to when we vote. Voting is about so much more than just that particular person.
Yep.
Thank you. I want to say to our other co-hosts, our other commentators, our other everybody on the other side of Zoom, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, please love, please share, please leave your comments, please leave your questions. I do go back and I read everything that you all have to say, and I try my best to present it to the panel so that they can give us a well thought out answer from the moment of now. That's why they get no pre-screeners from me. To my panelists, I want to say to you all, thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy Saturday to talk about a topic that I feel is profound. It will always be a profound topic, a topic that we all should want to gain some knowledge, some wisdom, and some understanding. But until next time, I will see you all in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, please join us again as we come back. Not this particular panel, I don't know, just Ned, you never know. You know what I'm saying? Ask and ye shall receive. So I'm gonna do some asking, some investigative discovery. But until then, you all, thank you so much for joining us. I bid you peace.